David Smith here with yet one more flipped classroom math lesson. 3 tips before we start. First, remember that you can slow down or speed up the playback to suit your needs. Second, you can pause the video at any point to catch up with your notes or jot down questions. Third, you can turn on the captions and read my words on the screen. So here we are. I've been telling you about this chi-square calculation for a little while now in class. And now we're right there. Last night you were asked to come up with some kind of calculation that you felt did a better job than numeric difference or percent difference do alone. And so now we're going to formalize what you might have come close to or come up with in last night's assignment. So let's take a look. There's an essential term in the chi-square calculation, and that encapsulates, it covers both the numeric difference and the percent difference. So let's take a look at that term. First off, chi-square. It looks like an X, but that's actually the Greek letter chi. So we write chi-square. We don't say X squared. Okay? We don't do that. We say chi-square. Okay, so we have this basic term. Here's a fraction. On the top, we have observed minus expected, parentheses around it, and then we're squaring that. And on the bottom, we just put expected. So these are values you've been figuring out from the various problems that we've been working through so far in this unit. Now check this out. The top, observed minus expected, this is basically the numeric difference. So that's one thing that we've been looking at, trying to figure out how weird something is from what you would expect. So the top of our fraction has the numeric difference built into it. Okay? Now, we're dividing that by expected. So this whole fraction is similar to how we calculate percentages. Remember, we divide one thing by another, multiply by 100, that will give us the percentage. So the overall term here encapsulates both the numeric difference and the percent difference. And that makes sense, and that's kind of cool, because we've been exploring those two ways of measuring differences for a couple of weeks now. And it's not surprising that the essential term in our calculation is going to encapsulate both of those things. Okay, now that you're familiar with the essential term in the calculation, let's talk about the formula. Okay, so I'm going to introduce another Greek letter. That's the Greek letter sigma. And in mathematics, sigma stands for sum of. So we commonly, in mathematics, will add up like a series of numbers, and we can use this notation to denote that we're adding those numbers up. We're going to use it a little bit less formally in this example. So what we're saying is the sum of observed minus expected squared over expected. So what we're going to do is when we have a situation where we're flipping coins or rolling die, we're having a set of outcomes. Like a coin flip, we have the outcomes of heads and we have the outcomes of tails. So what we're going to do with this formula is we're going to do the calculation, this essential term, for each result, then add the whole results up, and that is the chi-square statistic. Okay, you're probably wondering, okay, that's all great, David, but how do you actually use this to get a result? So let's do that. So we use chi-square to analyze the situation to try to figure out how weird it really is. Okay? So here's the situation. We flipped a coin 44 times, or 100 times, and we got 44 heads. Okay? So the first step in any one of these is to get a nice table that displays all your data clearly. So I've started that table for you. Now I'm going to fill it in. So 100 flips. What's expected for heads? 50. That's what the theoretical probability tells us. So we get 50. What did we get? We got 44. So that's not the only result we got. We also got a bunch of tails. So we need to account for those as well. So what's expected for tails? Be the same thing. We'd expect to get 50 tails. And what did we get? We got 100 minus the 44 heads. That leaves 56 tails left over. Now I've added a new column. We haven't done totals columns. We're going to do that now. And believe me, it's important because some of these situations are kind of complicated, and the total is a way to check to make sure you filled in your table correctly. So totals should add up across. 50 plus 50 is 100, and then 46 plus 56 is also 100, and that worked because we did 100 flips. This should be the total of those flips. Okay, make sure your table is correct. If it's not, your chi-square calculation will also be incorrect. So let's take a look. Remember, chi-square equals observed minus expected squared over expected plus however many results we have. In this case, we have just 2 results, so I'm going to have 2 of these terms that we can then do some number crunching on. So let's move that down. Chi-square is going to be, let's do heads first. So observed on heads was 44 minus 50 squared over expected, which is 50. So that's heads right there. Let's do tails. It's a plus. So now it's observed. That's 56 minus 50 squared, again, over 50. So be careful, especially in the beginning, with your plug-in step, that you refer to your table and you put the correct values in the correct places before you start calculating away. Okay, now you probably have the skills right now to finish this out. Evaluate that fraction, get your answer. It's probably going to be a little decimal. Evaluate that fraction, see what you get, combine them together, and see what you get for your chi-square. Pause the video and give it a shot. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Chi-square is 44 minus 50 is negative 6, squared is 36. So this one is 36 over 50 plus, now this one, 56 minus 50, that's also going to be 6 squared, which is 36. So it's 36 over 50. So if you want to get your calculator out now, you can do that. You could combine these top 2's to get 72 over 50, but you do ultimately want to turn your chi-square into a decimal, and in this case it's 1.44. So the chi-square value for this scenario, 44 heads and 100 flips, is 1.44. Now, what you're going to be able to do now is use this chi-square calculation to compare different situations. Like, let's say, what if I got 460 heads out of 1,000? Is that more weird or less weird than 44 heads out of 100? You could do that calculation and find out what the chi-square value for that was. Okay, I want to give you one to try. So once I give you all the information, spell it out, I want you to pause the video, take that calculation all the way through, get your chi-square value. So I changed it out here. Now I'm saying we're getting 58 heads in 100 flips. Here's the table. I kept the expecteds in there because we know what those are. So go ahead and give it a shot. Actually, before you do that, is this going to be more weird or less weird than 44 out of 100? Think about that, and then think about how your chi-square value should be different from 44 and 100 heads. Okay, let's see how you did. Observed here is 58. That makes sense. And then observed here is just 100 minus 58. We know we had to get 42 tails. Okay, so now we can start plugging in. Actually, one more check. 50 plus 50 is 100. 58 plus 42 is also 100, so our table's good. So now let's do our plug-in step with our chi-square. So chi-square is going to be observed 58 minus 50 squared over 50 plus 42 minus 50 squared over 50. So far, so good. Let's continue on. My chi-squares are getting kind of crazy there. So 58 minus 50 is 8. Squared is 64. That's 64 over 50. And this one's also going to be negative 8 squared. It's going to end up being 64 over 50, which gets us 128 over 50. Put that in your calculator, and you get 2.56. Now think about that result for a minute. 58 heads in 100 is 8 away from the expected. And we have a higher chi-square value, 2.56, than we did when we're 6 away, where we had a chi-square of 1.44. So that tells you something about chi-square. The bigger the number, the further away from the expected the situation is. Now that you've watched the video, jot down some notes or questions for our next class. You can also re-watch the portions of the video that you didn't understand so well the first time. If you enjoyed the video, please click like, and if you'd like to help me grow my YouTube channel, please click subscribe.